And welcome to Conservative Talk.
And this week we got a lot for you.
Oh yeah, we're busting the shovels. That's getting a little deep.
This whole show might as well be a rabbit hole. So for starters, when the chips are down, Congress spends billions.
And mainstream media says the first horseman cometh.
And also the two things that you're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table, they're back on the menu.
Yes, and Buck's been telling us about how anything you say can and will be used against you by Alexa.
And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. My name is Jamie, and I think this is Justin.
That was just my beard.
That's what she said.
As always, we always like at the beginning of the show to encourage our viewers to like and share all the content that they run across on all of our episodes, on all the platforms or any platform that you may run across it on. Make sure you also hit the subscribe button wherever you see this so you can keep up to date with everything that you see or that we're putting out there and that we're wanting to do moving forward. Also, go to our website, and it's right there on your screen. It's conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner, or the lower right-hand corner, and help us out with what you're able to. Every bit of the sponsorships go an incredibly long way to helping us to really be able to move forward and really progress our show and being able to get our message out a lot further than what we're able to reach at the moment. In addition to that, make sure that you sign up for our email list. It's right there on the top line. Just put in your email address, hit submit. Jamie and I are really building this out a lot more. We're working on being able to really reach y'all, and we're working on essentially what would be a bi-weekly email that would be sent out with weekly update or bi-weekly updates of everything that we're doing, putting out the information that you're seeing or that you may be seeing and you may not be seeing, in all honesty, and giving our take and our perspectives on it. In addition to that, you're also going to want to do that because we're really in the midst of working on something that's going to have a lot of potential or a lot of national impact, quite frankly.
We've already,
Yes, it's in the works at the moment. Yeah, it's in the works at the moment, but it's something that's really going to be groundbreaking.
And it's very important to the country because it's something that not just something that we believe in, but it's something that everyone needs to be, that honestly needs to come out more about it. Like we've heard congressional members talk about this.
Well, it's not giving too much information, but I will say
I'm excited about it.
It's an area of public knowledge or it's an area of, I guess you could say public knowledge that is well known. It's just not very well understood.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most concise way of saying it. Yeah. So make sure you sign up for that email list and make sure that you continue to listen to all of our shows and keep an eye out for what's coming. And I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised by that.
Let's jump
right into your favorite part.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot. 112 days until we beat Stacey Abrams.
122 days.
122 days.
It's Jamie's first day. Give him a break.
It's been a long week. 122 days.
Exactly. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. So as we mentioned,
when the chips are down, Congress keeps spending.
Look, exactly. Well, not just spending billions. I don't think that's quite. So we hear that terminology or that number more and more and more. If you pay attention to the news, if you pay attention to anything going on, you hear the term millions, billions, or
you don't even really hear millions anymore. It's billions.
It's all billions and trillions. It's something that, quite frankly, it's a number that they keep throwing out there that's almost kind of having the same impact as what, say, for instance, Grand Theft Auto had on everybody's visions of violence and walking up punching grannies in the face. It almost desensitizes Americans to the actual numbers that they are spending there.
Yeah, because like when you think about it, I'm waiting to hear, there's two things that we hadn't had yet, right? The first $250 billion spending issue or market, and the first trillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in our lifetime, we'll see the first trillionaire, which is insane, right? Like that's one person being worth $1 trillion,
which is, quite frankly, larger than most GDPs of some even
first world countries.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, think about it. On average, the UK has about $47 billion that it floats around. You know what I mean? And we are technically here. I don't even want to get into that because I saw a deficit is just a track of bills, right? We got to make that clear because we look at it as debt because to a certain degree it is debt, but like sovereigns can't have debt. You can't print your own money and not get rid of it. But that's a whole other ballgame for another show. But still it's a problem, right? Because
very much so.
Because at the end of the day, when you look at a capitalist country like ours, if we give out billions or say that our country is going to repay billions in a sense, then that comes back on the country itself and the Fed and its citizens. So when we start talking about, oh, we're just going to send $40 billion to Ukraine, or, you know, the main topic of this, another $52 billion, you know, you start to look at what is really going on here and how do we like bring this back to reality?
Yes. Even in the tech industry, $52 billion is
that's a lot of money.
That's a significant amount of funding.
I mean, when you think about the fact that Amazon, Tesla, Microsoft, and I can't think of any others. Those are the only $3 trillion Apple. Those are only $4 trillion companies that are in technically U.S. companies. Really, in the globe, they're really the only ones who are really $1 trillion companies.
I'd say potentially Google.
Google is
Facebook.
another one. Facebook has not reached the $1 trillion market cap yet, which is also interesting. You see what I'm saying? Which is part of the reason why they switched to Meta and started acquiring other things. When you look at the base of Facebook, where their ad revenue comes in, they haven't reached that cap yet. When you look at where the metaverse and you add in Oculus and all their other adventures with VR and things like that, they have the potential to get to that level, but they have to switch models, right?
Bring in more of those government contracting grants.
Yeah. Just being honest. I mean, everyone talks about like how do you get there? That's how you get there when you won't be realistic about it. You know, we talk about the innovations of SpaceX and, you know, Tesla and what Elon Musk was able to do. Like a lot of that is NASA and what, you know, governmental grants for, you know, electric vehicles and everything else. Elon Musk was just ahead of the curve when he was able to tap into it.
It's the Godfather.
He's the Godfather.
He's the EV Godfather.
I mean,
although
straight out of the PayPal mafia.
I did read. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, about how Rivian, our new EV manufacturer here in Georgia, is supposed to be cutting 5% of the jobs that they had promised to be bringing into the state, as well as essentially ramping up cost of what the vehicles that they're going to be producing are going to essentially cost.
Well, you know, here's the thing, right?
Well, that actually plays into the topic that we're talking about.
It plays into the topic. I do not have so much heartburn over that as I do other portions of this topic. And we're really going to dabble into it anyway, but I just want to get this point across first, right? You're going to start to see tech companies cut staff.
Yeah, Tesla.
Probably the only one you're not going to see is SpaceX, because SpaceX is so closely tied to NASA and
those government grants
and the government altogether, right? Basically, what has happened is NASA is become more of an oversight governmental organization.
Yes. They're a regulatory organization more than anything else.
That's it. And SpaceX is just using their facilities like, you know what I mean? Like it's theirs. That's pretty much it. They build everything in their own factories and whatever else needs to be done inside of SpaceX itself. But then they're going to go to what's NASA's, right, and launch the rockets and all that kind of stuff.
Houston has essentially become a rental space.
Pretty much. Houston, Florida, the rest of it. All everything that was used to be NASA except for maybe Huntsville, is...
Well, Huntsville's not the one in the museum now.
Yeah. Is pretty much, in conjunction with SpaceX, which is how we're able to continue to see the gains that SpaceX has. Also part of the reason why I believe that SpaceX is still a private company, because there's such a governmental tie to it. Now, to that factor, we would not be able to produce the level on the governmental side that we do at SpaceX if NASA was the one doing it. Because think about, you know what I mean? Think about that. We're talking about billions on top of the other billions that are being spent.
Private equity is the number one generator when it comes to government technology.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right into what we were talking about. Of course, as we're saying, when chips are down, Congress spends billions. So if you're not aware, and I want to quote this correctly, it is the USICA, the United States Innovation and Competition Act. So essentially what it is, or what it's being sold as, is a bill that would essentially promote and to really foster semiconductor chip manufacturers within the United States. We are currently relying on outsourced chips, and these chips are things that drive everything from your cell phones to cars to, quite frankly, smart bombs that we use to blow up terrorists.
Everything.
So and us outsourcing them and not being able to have, and right now there's a massive shortage. It's one of the reasons why we have a massive one of the reasons why vehicle prices are so high, because they're not able to produce them at the levels they were before because of China and COVID. But anyway,
which is the whole point, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So you add in the fact that we never finished the trade war, and now China's in the lead on the trade war.
Thank you, bud.
Then you throw in the fact of the slowing of shipping and manufacturing because of COVID.
Thank you, bud.
All of that plays into why we're at 9.1% inflation.
Yes.
And a good portion of that is because you got to think, when GDP comes in, consumption and investment is a big portion of GDP. So you got to keep dollars turning, right? So if people who aren't earning fixed income, who aren't earning good wages, can't spend money, or they're scared to spend money, then what starts to happen is inflation creeps in every single time. So what we're starting to see is you're starting to see that because those two factors are starting to slow down and we can't raise level of consumption, it's really messing with what we can do as a price wise. And then you throw in the fact that you can't get chips, you can't get, foreign vehicles, which is your luxury items, things of that nature, because they can't be produced. I mean, even Ford has come out and said, we'll give you the base model and then call you when the chip comes in, because they still got to move product, because they still have to turn a profit margin. That's the only way the business is sustainable. Your profits are like how you balance out your balance sheet, pay your dividends, and make sure that your payroll is paid.
Yep.
I mean, no one wants to go back to the old GE days where you take out a loan to pay payroll, and then when you can't pay your loan back, you can't pay payroll. Everyone was wondering why, in 2008, why it became such a big crisis. It was because when you had powerhouses like that who were, okay, I'll take a loan out for this amount of money for this year or next year. Then when payroll goes down because I can't pay my premiums because my profits aren't coming in, what do I do on my balance sheet?
We declare bankruptcy.
And we got to restart, and we cut 50% of our staff.
Exactly. So right now, let's jump into this real fast as far as what's going on with this bill. So both the House and the Senate have passed their own versions of this bill. They passed, and neither of them were congruent. I guess the best way to say it. When things are passed in both the House and the Senate, in order for it to go to the president's desk, they have to essentially be the same. Or they have to be the same.
They have to be the same.
So they are in the process of trying to convince each other to pass their or the House's version or the Senate's version, or come together and pass something that they both can quote unquote agree on.
Which I want to say is typical for those who watch the show who don't know.
Any piece of legislation.
It doesn't matter where you are, if it's state legislature or anything else.
Yes.
One bill goes to the final head body to be signed, governor or, president. But
Must
it has
be
to be
passed through both houses below it.
Correct.
Yes. So right now they are essentially at an impasse. Well, I say an impasse. The minority leader, McConnell, in one of his rare acts of goodness, has come out and said that Republicans will not support anything coming into the Senate as far as this piece of legislation that are as long as they are still trying to pass the Build Back Better, and we'll call it the quote-unquote light version, because they're trying to cut some of the stuff out in order to get Manchin on board so they can break that 50 vote threshold. Because right now, Manchin said he's not voting for Build Back Better the way it was. So they're working with Manchin and trying to get to where he wants it to be before he'll come on board and support it. Well, McConnell says as long as they're doing that, the Republicans will not support this piece of legislation coming through here. Like I said, one of his rare moments of goodness.
Good for him.
Mm-hmm. So it's essentially at a deadlock. But I will say, it's interesting to note some of the things that are actually in this piece of legislation. So, as we brought up earlier, it was $52 billion. And that's just $52 billion that is going to be going to essentially the semiconductor manufacturing, industry.
So for those who don't necessarily aren't into everything like Justin and I are, right? When you see this is mainly Intel. Like I'm just going to be honest, right? This is mainly Intel, right? Because when you look at a HP, when you look at Dell, when you look at all of these different computer brands, they have an Intel chip inside of them. That's what we mean by made in America. And from that standpoint, I am in full support of this because I think that that's one thing that needs to come back to America is we need to be able to produce our own chips. We need to be in control of our own technology. We are leading the world right now when it comes to, technological innovation and the Internet of Things, but we do not control our own chips.
Yes, absolutely.
Think about that.
Yes.
These are American companies who don't buy American chips.
Yes. At least not made in America chips. They are still
not made in America.
Yeah, they are still
American chip.
Yes, they are American owned, but not made in America chips. But if we didn't have such high corporate taxes, if we didn't have all of the essentially these disincentivizing policies that are in place that essentially cause these companies to move to these other places and to get these essentially the slave labor that they have, or at least a lower paying labor that they have. If we were not essentially putting our foot on the throat of these industries, they likely would not have left to begin with.
They wouldn't have been here. They wouldn't have left. They'd still be here. We wouldn't be in this situation. Of
which the Build Back Better Light is actually trying to increase these taxes on these people.
I saw that, which is a big problem because now they want to tax. So they want to increase corporate bond taxes, right? To up 15%, which would mean that the yield would drop because now there's more taxable income on taking or purchasing corporate bonds. I got a big problem with that.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't understand this too. Like the same ratings that go for corporate bonds, same thing that affect municipal bonds. So not only so don't get it twisted. Like you're going to get taxed too the moment they increase this, because when your local government comes out and says, hey, we need to secure debt for whatever reason, like that in turn means your millage rate or something is going to have to go up. So there's a double effect to this because those same bond ratings are affected the same. I think that there's a way to balance this out to where you can drop a certain portion of corporate taxes, all right, but still keep property taxes on corporations at the same level. Because then it essentially does the same thing, right? They improve a piece of property, the digest goes up anyway. you keep your residential millage rate at the same rate or low, increase the property or just keep the property taxes at the same rate for corporate taxes, for corporate property, right? Because the value of it, once it's improved, is going to go up on commercial property anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But then you reduce what's taxed on the business itself. And I think we're in a great situation.
Yeah.
For all.
2 and 2 are coming together on that.
Who knows?
But all problems can't be solved at the local level, apparently.
You know what? Like,
if they just gave us a magic wand, we could cure all the world's problems in a single day.
That'd be it. It'd start with impeaching Joe Biden, but we'll get into that later.
That's coming soon. Oh man! So so another thing about that is, it's not just the incentives that the federal government is wanting to give to the semiconductor industry. It's all the other little pet projects that are embedded within this piece of legislation, which is the reason why
the
Senate nor the House wants to pass each other's bill.
Yep. It's pork barrel spending at its finest.
Exactly. So in an interview, they actually said that we don't want to take up the other chamber's piece of legislation simply because we have invested too much work. We've invested years worth of work into getting our projects into this piece of legislation,
which is why it's $52 billion. Because
$52 billion is just what's going to the semiconductor. That's not including
that's not the whole bill.
No, that's not the
whole
entire
bill.
No, that's not the entire.
So now we're really
entire price tag on it. That's just what would be going to the semiconductors.
So that means we're really looking at like $100 billion.
Close, yes.
I hadn't read the legislation, but I know a lot about this issue because here's my thing, right? And me and Buck have talked about this, okay? Because thing about this is,
you should see him in the dark corners.
I know. Justin gets mad at me and Buck because
I put my tinfoil hat on just so they can't read my mind.
So here's the thing about this issue, okay? Majority of the semiconductors and chips that are made across the world right now are made in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's why I believe that we need to bring this back, but why I have a problem with it being put forth now. When you look at Joe and Hunter's ties to China,
mm-hmm.
and the Chinese being
can't say that.
Who? And China, the People's Republic of China, wanting to bring Taiwan back in. Okay. If we bring back the majority of chip manufacturings to the United States, then that reduces the amount of willingness, I'll put it that way, willingness for us to defend Taiwan.
So another part of the article that I read that just came back to memory is that you had I believe she was the Undersecretary of National Defense. You had Austin coming up, the director, the Secretary of National Defense, and you had someone else. For the life of me, I cannot remember who it was. They said that it had to be passed by the end of July in the name of national security.
So I'm so glad you brought that up, right? Because here's the thing, okay? Remember when Nancy Pelosi was supposed to sneak over to Taiwan, and China came, like, to the rest of us, to the majority of the world, no one had any idea, okay? No one even knew Nancy Pelosi was supposed to go to Taiwan until the Chinese, can't say Chinese, until the People's Republic of China's government came out and said that if any high-ranking official comes over to this side of the earth, then we will see that as a declaration of war, right? So, and everybody was like, the hell? What is that? Why? Like, what? For what reason? This is part of the issue, is because if we go over there and make a deal with the Taiwanese about semiconductors that includes them, then that goes against China's one China policy, which they see as an act of war, because they still do not declare Taiwan as a free country.
Mm-hmm.
So us bringing back the chips right now says that this is us in good faith leaving Taiwan alone and you can have the island.
And I wonder how China found out about it. Could it be an inside leak inside the executive?
I mean, it could be the fact that on one of their oil companies, the president's son sits on and owns 10% of. But we'll get into that later.
He divested 10 days after they made that deal, okay?
Okay. And the big guy gets 10% of everything. So you know how that goes.
About that. Oh, man.
We have so
more to come. More to come.
But to me, like, on a serious note, to me, that's the biggest issue with this.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It
is a national security issue.
It is a national security issue.
Mm-hmm.
And though I think we need to bring our chips home, everyone needs to be mindful of that.
Well, think of it this way. We bring it back home. And I am not arguing against this.
Not at all.
It's just something to consider in this venture. Bringing it back home. And then China comes in and takes over Taiwan. We know China has a sordid history of, let's call it what it is, stealing technology. Are we going to blow those manufacturing facilities up once we leave over there?
Nope.
China will come in, take it over, and they'll have the exact same capacity that we had. They'll have the Taiwanese chip manufacturing capacities, and they'll have the manufacturing capacities in hand that we are using now for 95% of all of our chips.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And what that essentially does is it makes any deal that we ever had or were planning to have under President Trump as far as a trade war, null and void completely.
Exactly.
Because then at that point, they have all the leverage. At that point, there is no reason for China to buy American products outside of oil, which at this point, they're going to buy Russia. They're going to go to Russia. Yep.
They effectively cut us out, or they become more or less the global superpower because they are able to
stole their way
mess
to the top.
With their currency.
Yep, they stole their way to the top, which is another major issue, right? Because what the Chinese do in an interesting way, which is why I started off the show saying, a sovereign can't really be in debt. Okay. What you do is what basically almost every other African country has done every time it changes rulers, or gets taken over by another government. You dilute your currency so much that you devalue it completely, and then you just start another one. And then the rest of it just becomes relics. Zimbabwe is the perfect example. Zimbabwe started printing $10,000, $1 million bills because their currency was devalued so much. People were paying $1 million for a Coke. And you see a lot of this.
That's what happened in Germany before World War II.
Well, I mean, you see a lot of this in poor countries, which is like, I went on a mission trip, which is probably my favorite trip of all because it really humbled me, right? Nicaragua, it humbled me. It humbled me big time. I left everything there. Literally came home with nothing but the clothes on my back because I realized that I have been completely selfish and I need to let myself go. Right.
Didn't last long, did it?
No, it's still there.
I'm just giving a hard time.
It's still there. I do like nice things though.
Well, you're American, of course.
But just an example, right? In comparison, there are I won't even name it. The second poorest country in our hemisphere. Okay. When I went there, I paid $1 for a canned Coke that to us will cost $1 to 75 cents. I got $500 in their money back off of $1 because of the exchange rate, right? Because the reality is that as long as you have a product and as long as you have good GDP, you can essentially destroy your currency and build another one, which is what China has done. China has said, okay, we'll just keep devaluing our currency until it's not worth anything to have that dollar go as far as it can, and then we'll just start another one, which is what they're doing. They are now, and they're using COVID. They are now have decided that they are going to airdrop, right, to everyone's phone because they have that much control, digital currency of their currency. And this was the first test a couple months ago that they did of that, because they've now depreciated their currency so much. They've built a new bank off of it. They bought up some land in Africa. They're starting to rebuild the Silk Road. They are starting the Eastern IMF. All led by the Chinese dollar, similar how the West was backed off the USD. That being said, now they're like, which is another thing. When people started talking about cryptocurrencies and the mining of cryptocurrencies, right? The largest miner until mining stopped was the Chinese government. And then once they reached a certain value, they said, okay, we're going to start our own. And mining is illegal in the country because they didn't want anybody else mining it, because they didn't want anybody else not to be able to switch to their digital dollar.
Well, that's definitely an interesting.
It's crazy because then they're going. I mean, Alibaba is the Amazon of China. They've literally stolen every aspect of our intellectual property. If you are
Alibaba,
if you are not a Chinese citizen, then you cannot own 51% of any company.
We think you can own property in China, but they can own ours.
They can own ours because the way our laws are set up, they can come over here and buy property. We can't go over there and buy property. If so, another.
Which in all honesty, I mean, we should just come in, seize all property that China owns in the United States, sell it at public auction, and just kick them out.
Yeah, I mean, and
what are they gonna say?
We have precedent for it too. I mean, that's
a little bit
kind of what we did to the Indians, but
and yeah, not going. Yeah,
we're not going there, but
yes, we can do it.
Same with these companies and farms and everything else that China has been buying up. We need to go ahead and start making moves towards that. Otherwise, they're like, you know what I mean? And it's no different than what they're doing to us. Think about this, okay? Apple's manufacturing companies that are over there, they are not 100%. It's a different LLC. Like, for those who don't know, like, you don't have like just one company that owns everything. You have, your main holdings company, which is where you report your taxes, but all your subsidiaries, all of that is different names spread out, whatever. So Apple China, I'm just using that as an example. Apple China LLC is 51% owned by someone who is a Chinese national citizen.
Oh. So what you're saying is America First policies need to prevail, and we need to get rid of China.
Not only that, America's First policy needs to be stronger.
There we go.
We started on the right direction, and we need to finish the job and increase it.
Sounds good. Well, that kind of can roll us into a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, and that says the first horseman cometh. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, that we are talking about the 7 seals of the apocalypse. And kind of jokingly, but at the same time, is it really though? So for those who have not been paying much attention to all of the numerous virological outbreaks that have been going on throughout the United States, we have now seen. So doctors are now saying that you should start masking indoors again, because there are 2 new strains of COVID that are coming out.
It's just so interesting.
Yes.
It's now that they want to do this.
They are, and these strains are aggressive, or they have mutated to the point to where natural immunity is no longer effective. Not that they consider natural immunity effective to begin with.
That's why you had to have the booster, right? Because natural immunity wasn't effective, and herd immunity was not going to be a thing.
But yes, I believe it was Omicron 5B is now the prevalent COVID disease that's out there. They are now asking that people.
That's a sorority. Sorry, that ADHD. I was like, Omicron 5. Why is my brain remembering that? Omicron Pi. Those are my sisters. Sorry. Anyway.
Ooh,
ADHD moment. Forgive me.
That moment. I don't know. So, so they're bringing that one out. Or they're saying that that's the most prevalent one. They're asking that people mask indoors now. that the myth of being outdoors and being in crowds, or just because you can go outside and be in a crowded area outdoors, you can essentially be safe. They're saying that's just the myth. That's not really real at all. That has never been a thing. Medical professionals are swearing by this, the hand on the Bible, everything about it. But not just that, we're seeing a surge now, in monkeypox. Look, Georgia has seen a surge in monkeypox.
I have to say it.
Say it, please. And if you don't, I will.
So,
if you don't, I will.
Look, I gotta say this first.
On 5. If you don't say it by 5, I'm going to. 1.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's funny to see that we're seeing a surge in monkeypox right after Pride Month.
We went there. I went going there. That's so Justin and I have a mutual friend. Ooh. And when I first heard about monkeypox, I was like, this is AIDS. I was like, this is every story I heard about AIDS. I was like, are you sure you're telling us the right story? You know what I mean? And then I literally like called this person. I was like, I apologize. I completely apologize because you were ahead of the curve in telling us this information because we had no idea. And then it started surging like this. And now all of a sudden you hear, I'll put it this way, just to kind of alluded to it. But if you remember the original story of how people got AIDS, that's how you get monkeypox.
Yep. I mean, the CDC literally came out and put essentially
sexual guidelines.
Exactly. Guidelines on how to mutually
be intimate with your partner,
mutually masturbate with your partner.
There you go.
Look, this is an adult show.
Yeah, that's it.
Mutually masturbate with a partner while you think you may have monkeypox.
And the CDC came out and you can go look it up. It's on their website. You can go look it up. It talks about having sex with your clothes on or not
touching,
just watching. It's weird. It's weird. Like the fact that the CD, and you want us to take you seriously? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. Like, that's how it's transmitted. It's really, monkeypox is really a sexually transmitted disease.
It is.
Like, that's like, it's not. It's not.
It is an STD.
It's an STD.
They don't want to say STD because it only affects one section of the population right now.
Yep.
But in addition to that, there has also been a
rise of a plague.
Exactly. Well, so if everybody remembers, West Nile, the West Nile virus, apparently it's been found in Georgia in mosquitoes now.
So, no, that was
in Atlanta
area, which is interesting. So here's the thing. Okay, I don't think we've ever talked about this.
Do I need to be vaccinated?
No.
Okay.
No. I might need to grab my tinfoil hat. I might need to grab my tinfoil hat for this one because here's something a lot of people don't know. And
don't just say it.
I am, but I'm pausing only because, I might not be able to go to church on Sunday because they're not going to forgive me on this one.
They don't have to. The big man will do it.
2014. Okay. I call it Bill Gates' first run.
No.
Because the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right, went, for a lot of people who don't know, okay, I'm United Methodist. I've been United Methodist my entire life. Bill and Melinda Gates are United Methodist as well. In 2014, our church, in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, came up with this idea to eliminate malaria. Okay. It really started in about 2008 or so. And then it kind of grew to where by 2014 was the target goal, which is why I was like West Nile, right? Because it's along the same regions, transmitted the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how Bill Gates got into vaccinations. I just think it's interesting to note where both of these organizations are going. I've had a very disheartening time with my church. And for those of you who don't know, the United Methodist Church, we've split on, primarily two issues. One we got over and we were okay with. The second one is what we really split over. And I'll just go ahead and say it, right? Our church had a global. So I have to give just a slight bit of background.
Yes, by all means.
The way that United Methodist Church works, we are a global church, kind of like the Catholic Church. Okay. And what happens is you have your local conferences, right? Then you have your continental conferences, and then you have the global church as a whole. Every 4 years, our global church meets, and that's how we create rules, laws, things like that for the entire church. Our set of rules is what we call the Book of Discipline. And every 4 years, a new book is printed, and those are the rules that guide our community. Okay. Since about 2008, our church has been fighting over homosexuality and the acceptance of. Our church has only seen something like this once before, and it was with alcoholism. So where most churches, you'll have communion and communions with wine, right? The United Methodist Church is a global church. We do not have communion with wine. We have it with grape juice. Mm-hmm. And that is because we have a extremely large population of alcoholics for whatever reason inside of our church. So we felt as a church, it'd be better to use grape juice, right? Not comparing the two or saying that they're similar, but this was the last time that we had such a dramatic change inside the church. 2008, we started having this conversation about homosexuality. And when it was just homosexuality, though it was a large discussion, the church decided that we are to a certain degree okay with this. And the primary issue was not allowing, had nothing to do with acknowledging homosexuality couples in the church. It was about the marriage. And beforehand, it was allowing ordained United Methodist ministers to perform homosexual marriages. Okay. The global church at large was not okay with it. Now, and I'm going into so much detail for a reason. The largest delegation at the time was the continent of Africa. And for those of you who do not know anything about where Africa is now, it's nothing like what we read or what we understand in America. And like they still kill people.
Throw them off the rooftops.
You know what I mean? For homosexuality.
Throw them off the rooftops.
And so basically they were ostracized from the church and went off to start their own church. And that gave the Western continents, Europe and the United States, the power block to vote in allowing that. Those of you who do know now where the divide is now, a lot of that is because in those conversations, it went to the next level to where they wanted to allow transgender ministers inside of the church. And the majority of the people said, this is where we draw the line. You know, a lot of churches now are saying, you know what, that's it. We're either going to go be non-denominational Wesleyan, or we're going to go join the United Global Church, which is what Africa started, and a few other, like Madrid, a few other places like that. Mm-hmm. I say all that to say this. It's interesting to note that in the time that we are in now, where you have, when you go back to less than 10 years ago, when you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the church doing something positive, saying we're going to go out here, and they were really primarily funding it just at that point. We were working with doctors and everything else to eliminate a disease. This has now become like a major thing for their foundation, and the same argument we were having then has become a major thing for the church. I just find it interesting that is a large portion of the left's now movement is to increase, these global forcible vaccinations, whereas, that was not the whole purpose. And this forcible acceptance of something upon religion. I'm all for I'm all for a civil union because I think that legally, outside of religion, anyone has the right to marry any other consenting adult as they want to. That is between you and the federal government. Okay. But religion is set aside for a reason. And though there's no real, there's no truth to this, the separation of church and state, there is a certain set of rules that the church sets aside for people who follow the church.
Mm-hmm.
And to see a church change its rules to fit a secular world really is disheartening for a lot of us who've, that's the only faith we know.
That's true. And for those of you who are listening, we did warn you that this would be full of rabbit holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
So getting back onto this one,
the monkeypox vaccination, that's where I was really going with it.
Yeah. It's
just interesting now that the federal government now is like, oh, well, we already got vaccines for monkeypox already ready to go when it's an outbreak.
And they have they've already, I'm sure, have the EU written up or the executive order or the emergency authorization written up to where as soon as it crosses a certain threshold, they'll say, all right, everybody get vaccinated or you can't go out in public.
And you know what? And see, that's the thing that really pissed me off because that you ain't got to worry about one thing, and me getting monkeypox is not one.
Well, I'm curious to see when H1N1 is going to rear its head, when swine flu, bird flu, and all these other guys are going to start making a resurgence. I'm thinking probably going to be somewhere around about October, mid-October, maybe early to mid-October. That way, everybody can be shut up inside their houses for about 2 weeks, and then they can well, actually, I take that back. It would probably be somewhere around about early to mid-September.
Mm-hmm.
Shut them inside their houses for 2 weeks. That gives them a month to mail out all these absentee ballots in order to essentially flood the midterms.
I am telling you, the moment that they pull this again, we will nut up.
Oh. One can hope.
Because you can't, here's the thing. Fool me once, I kind of want to quote the old George Bush quote, but I'm not going to do that. Fool me once, but fool me twice, you can't fool me again.
Although, yet they fooled us time and time again, or at least politicians.
No, at least politicians have fooled people.
Sorry to get so drab on everybody on that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, so of course, mainstream media is really pumping this out, particularly here at the local level. And I'll bring that to really kind of throw dirt in our local news outlets. In that sense.
One in particular who, for whatever reason,
was literally,
he's a columnist though.
Well, it wasn't even him that wrote this. It was the paper that picked it up out of a Chicago outlet, and printed it on the front page above the fold.
Yeah, I was mainly talking about the columnist who
routinely puts out the
COVID numbers, COVID, even when there's like 10 people. You know what I mean? When it's not an outbreak.
Hey, there's 15 now. Okay, he's serious.
Oh God.
But yeah,
that guy.
The fact that they are still trying to push this narrative and such a high rate is just, I don't think they've caught up with the fact that COVID's dead, guys. Come on, let's move on.
Like you did, it did its job for you.
Exactly.
We'll undo it though.
But yeah, it's the narrative that they're pushing, and I'm curious to see exactly how they're going to do this. In all honesty, I'm curious to see if the Spanish flu is going to make a resurgence come September.
Who knows? We'll ask Fauci when he gets out of.
If anybody ever seen him.
Yeah, I was about to say, is he still quarantined?
He's quarantined since 2020. I don't think, outside of being in his, ultra protective box where he didn't have to wear a mask at the baseball games, sitting next to the governor of New York, then.
It's funny how he didn't wear it out after he was telling everybody else to.
Well, he's telling everybody to wear it too.
And then turns around and catches it.
I think he tried. I think that may have been, orchestrated just so people can.
So they can push it. So they can have the appearance again. That's an interesting thought.
Not just that, but people would be sympathetic towards him because he had COVID. He's old.
We told you this whole thing was a rabbit hole.
Oh man. So let's get into the next one we talked about. The two things that you couldn't discuss at the dinner table and are now back on the menu. So
Church politics.
Yes, exactly. If you've never heard the expression, the two things that you cannot discuss while sitting at the dinner table with your entire family, say for Thanksgiving, one is religion, the other is politics. You cannot discuss those. It is outside table etiquette. If you do, it can cause a big family uproar between you and Aunt Matilda over there, and just ruins the entire menu or the entire festivities. So there has been a essentially, well, as long as I can remember, quite frankly, it's not that terribly long in the eye of the country or this issue entirely, but churches stayed out of politics for the most part, or at least for the most part anyway.
So I will say this. Churches stay out of politics in every community but the African American community.
Those people.
Church is your politics in the African American community.
We're going to get canceled for that one.
It'll be all right. They ain't canceled us yet. They ain't going to cancel us at all.
That is true.
Especially after some of the things I said last week.
Because
I'm really going to get into this. I like, here's the thing, because I will never forget this statement. My dad, those who don't know, my dad was United Methodist minister. And he was very big in our church. And you know, he looked at me one day and he said, you know, son, with an attitude like that, you'd probably be better off being a politician than a minister. Because I don't like to pull punches. Like, you know what I mean? I like to tell it how it is. I'm say it nicely, you know, I'll make you feel good about it. But later on, when you think about it, you're gonna be like,
I just don't care.
I just don't care.
No, I just don't care.
Yeah, that's true. But here, I know where we're going with this. And, you know, the African American community, that's always been, they've always gone to the minister for not just religious insight, but political insight, which is why I find a lot of what's going on now very disheartening, because it's misleading.
Mm-hmm. So if you're not aware of what we're talking about, there has been a new political organization that has been put together that covers upwards of more than 1,000 congregations throughout the state of Georgia, and the majority of them being within the metro Atlanta area or Atlanta area at large. And they're essentially all African American or Black churches, and they're all Democrat affiliated churches, and Ebenezer being essentially the central one of them. And if you're not aware, that's the
Warnocks.
The good Senator Reverend Dr. Warnock Raphael saying, you know,
yeah, I don't even like calling him a reverend.
Well, you know, the pastor at the church that protests military funerals is still called a reverend, or at least a pastor.
The pastor who supports police brutality. The pastor who supports corruption. But we're going to get into that later. Because, like, y'all...
The pastor who...
supports abortion.
Who supports beating his wife.
Who has beaten his wife and been detained for it.
Mm-hmm. And a couple other things that we're going to be bringing to you as well.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the model. See, which is why I have a hard problem.
Another reason why you need to sign up for our newsletter. We're going to have another special be coming out very soon. Heads up. But anyway, yeah, so this organization is putting together, and this 1,000+ congregations, they're estimating that the reach of this is going to be a couple 100,000 people that they're essentially going to be ministering political thoughts and values to on this issue.
Yep.
And it's going to be stumping grounds from the pulpit.
Yep. That's it. It is. I've had some of these churches on this list I've had an issue with for a long time. Right. Because I am fully against, don't care who it is, what race you are, when the minister goes up there and tries to convince everyone why he needs a new jet to help get outreach better. and the jet really is seen when the minister won't help a family get to another part of the state through his jet that they paid for through their tithes to the church, but he uses the jet to go on vacation with his family. I have a problem with that. That's one of these churches who is a big helper to Raphael Warnock.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So their whole mission in doing this is to oppose SB 202, essentially Georgia's election integrity law. They have bought lock, stock, and barrel. Stumbling Joe Biden's election, Jim Crow law, suspicious. They bought that entire theory, and they're saying that it's being used to oppress the minority vote. It's being used to essentially keep them from being able to have the representation that they feel like they deserve and that they need in office in order to actually have a say in everything that's going on. Well, that's what that's the entire reason behind they're doing this. So they're saying that because the number of days have been limited or have been defined of how many early voting days,
which is one of the largest in the
state. Yes, exactly. Well, one of the largest in the countries. The drop boxes, the fact that those have actually been codified now, the fact that you cannot hand out water and food in line to people
because
they are in favor of electioneering in a sense.
Yeah, they want to go ahead and engineer it because even those of you who know in Floyd County, we had a former commissioner,
Wendy Davis.
Yeah, Wendy came out and was handing out Democratic tip lines and hotlines when they were passing out water. And I go, oh, we're just giving them water and food. No, you were giving them basically propaganda.
Yes.
And masking it as, beverages and food. We actually gave in, the Republican Party and the Assembly gave in and allowed for drop boxes, but having a drop box with a camera by it is suppressing
inside
you
of a
now.
Building.
Yeah. Is suppressing you now because you can't sneak up in the middle of the night in a dark corner and stuff it with ballots anymore.
And allowing absentee ballots to be sent out.
Or collected and harvested. Because last time I checked, that wasn't a thing either before, this whole COVID mess started.
Well, it was, but not to the extent of what it was not an election changing extent for the statewide and state legislative issues.
So Justin knows more about the legalities of a lot of this more than I do, but correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. To a certain degree, what we are labeling as harvesting was allowable in certain situations like assisted living homes and things of that nature. You just
up to a certain number, yes.
Up to a certain number. You just couldn't have someone with no regulation or no credentials or, anything else just show up with a bunch of ballots and then stuff them in a random box. Mm-hmm. That was illegal. So that's what I mean when I say the harvesting was not allowed because one nursing home facility employee who collected the ballots for people who got permission from their power of attorney or whatever, and then had it go in versus someone who either just randomly showed up to a nursing home or just had a bunch of ballots and had no way of checking it, just stuffing them in envelopes. Like we saw in 2000 Mules. People were literally just showing up and just shoving envelopes inside an absentee ballot and then looking around suspiciously.
Taking pictures of it to show or to be able to send to where they can collect the bounty on the ballots they're putting in.
Awful.
Mm-hmm. But that's what SB 202 addressed, but yet that's what they are fighting against.
Honestly, it's
Jim Crow laws, Jim Crow 2.0.
It's communist on its way, man. And that's why we had to stop it. Let me tell you, Brian Kemp is one of the best governors we've had in a long time. And we've had some great governors. Mm-hmm. We've had Nathan Deal was great. Sonny Perdue was great. Brian Kemp is awesome. And SB 202 and what the Georgia Assembly as a whole did to make sure that our elections were sound, secure, and people who
at least as secure as they could get away with at the time.
Yeah, because
they could have done more.
We're still going to work on this absentee box.
I'll still hold. Yeah, you still could have done more.
We're still going to hold on this absentee box thing.
On the absentee box, they can keep all the absentee box they want to. All they want to. Get rid of the no excuse absentee ballots. They can have all the boxes they want to. They can put a box on every corner they want to.
So here's my thing when it comes to that. I didn't realize the outcry from people who didn't know at the time that, like, you go in to vote, your employer cannot stop you from doing your civic duty, right? So some of those people were like, oh, I didn't know that. That's why I wanted to vote absentee. Okay, take that part away because that's an excuse. My employer wouldn't let me off. It's still an excuse. So there's a reason.
That's their fault though.
But now thanks to SB 202, you got 2 Sundays that you can go up there and vote.
Multiple Saturdays, 2 Sundays.
Multiple Saturdays. So you know, whether you're working,
if you're not working 7 days a week,
there's no excuse, you know what I mean, for you not to be able to go out and vote. Or
at least with the excuse that you didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's 2 excuses,
you know,
compounding upon
some
each
people
other.
don't know, like the guy who now lives in South Carolina that drove 4.5 hours to vote in an election here. But whatever.
I hope he does it again. Well, actually, he probably won't, because well, he might this time around. I don't know if they're going to get to him I don't know if they're going to get to him.
We'll see
this time around, but it's coming.
Yeah, the last
the boot is raised. I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
because they are slowly getting through that list of folks that they want to essentially hammer down on.
And here's the thing, though. On another side, he keeps making enemies, like an idiot. I mean, like even after he was notified that, hey, we're investigating you because we realize that you voted in another state that you hadn't lived in almost a decade. You moved to a completely different state and then send donations for a local campaign to an opponent from the new state
that got destroyed.
Like, you continually keep making enemies. Some people just never learn. Whatever. It's okay.
Can't fix stupid.
Can't fix stupid.
Oh man. But yeah, so this is another effort from essentially it's the DNC's effort to orchestrate another kind of a campaign wing or another campaign outlet to where they can get their message out. But conservatives typically shy away from this issue altogether. Your typical Southern, outside the Atlanta area church does not like talking about political issues, topics, or anything within the congregation because they have that mindset of the separation of church and state in their head. They don't want to really make a big deal in politics because it could offend people within their ministry, and they don't know who's on what side in their congregation, so they keep it vague and everything. It's time that stopped. It's time that they get over that and it stops. Because if you are not preaching about the issues that we are seeing today, then you are essentially giving false witness in my opinion. Because if you are not coming out and saying that abortion is wrong, that killing the innocent in the womb is wrong, and that if you support that, then you are essentially supporting the devil.
That's why we said we got to put it back on the table. Because here's the thing. You know, that Justin's absolutely right. I mean, for the longest time, especially outside the metro area, you know, that was the one day and the one time was either at dinner or at church we can talk about politics. And you're now starting to see, because the issue that I mentioned beforehand, like, I mean, a lot of people left my home church. I only went to my home church on Easter because, again, you're starting to see the same thing. You know, you're starting to see that the left is not afraid to come inside of our places of worship and push their message.
Schools, churches, what next?
So if we don't start pushing back, this is the world we're going to live in.
Exactly. I mean, they're indoctrinating their young, and then they're indoctrinating everybody else through their word of their ministerial and religious word. And everybody knows that the pastor is supposed to be seen as essentially the guide or the shepherd of the flock. He's supposed to be able to be someone that you can go to ultimately rely on for as much information involving religion as your preferred religion as absolutely possible.
Yep.
And if that man is standing up there in the pulpit or standing up there, in the pulpit essentially, and is preaching that, abortion is okay under Christianity. Are you kidding me? How is that even possible? How is anybody that's able to stand up in that pulpit and say abortion is the same, is acceptable in Christianity? How is that person even be able to be considered a minister? Why is the church not coming out and saying, okay, you're out, you're done, you're gone, get out?
You're starting to see where some people are willing to accept that, and until, I mean, here's the thing, man, and that's the real sad part about it. You know, when you look at numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our great grandparents were at 100% church participation. Our grandparents were at 97. Our parents were at 50%. Our age range is sitting around like 33% of regular church attendance. And this is why. It's because pastors have become too political. You know what I mean? And like, I mean, let me tell you, my
I would say they need to be more political.
Well, I mean, they come
or at least preaching what the Bible says and what the faith says.
Correct. That's the main thing, right? Because that in itself tells its own story. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't say political, opinionated.
Yes, that's a very good point.
You know what I mean?
Opinionated is exactly what it is.
Because what you're starting to see is people who will come into the church, and most people who come to the church, by the time they come to church, they really don't know much. So they're really depending on the pastor and its leadership to preach the word of God.
Yes.
So when you're going off script, similar to how when we talk about the difference in the Constitution, when you're going off script and you're not being by the book of what it says, and you're really going off what your interpretation is of it, you're leading, and you're leaning people to a certain direction.
Especially when your quote unquote interpretation has absolutely no foundation in the word whatsoever.
You're just doing it for your own political game.
Exactly. You were doing it to prevent or to prevail your own personal agenda and to prevail your own your ends and your party's ends, in a sense. Your church is no longer the actual faith. It is the political party that you are beholden to.
Yep.
That's what. So we'll go ahead and continue calling him Reverend Warnock, but he's not Reverend of a church. He's Reverend of the Democrat Party.
Yeah,
that's what he's the Democrat Party Reverend. He's no longer an actual Christian Reverend. He's a Reverend of the party.
And in reference to our last subject topic, I mean, they said around the time of the first horseman, we'll start to see this.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The leading of the false pope.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was what the two prophets that come out and the two false witnesses. Is that
the two false witnesses? Then there's talk of the lady in white riding the beast. Then there's the talk of the four horsemen and the false pope, because then there would be, but that's a whole nother animal.
We'll have to put our vestments on for that one, or at least our robes.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Well, then the studio might get blown up.
Like
they'll start saying that we're satanic worshiping and everything else. And
that's just because
they'll erect 4 or 5 pillars out in the yard with a capstone on top of them and blow it up in the yard.
Like that. That'll go back to
different languages, and
that'll go back to the Rosicrucian Guidestones. For those you don't know,
no, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll go there. We'll leave it at that.
Little mystery, folks.
Yeah.
So let's jump into a little bit about what Buck had been talking to us about, and that's
oh boy,
anything you say can and will be used against you by Alexa. So for those of you who don't know, you likely did not read the terms and conditions when you agreed to having the Alexa devices or the Echoes, the Dots, any of that stuff installed, or even, quite frankly, the Ring cameras that you put in your homes.
Or the update for them.
Exactly.
Because
you still have to hit the terms and conditions.
I know, but they usually hit you with the update. Like the first one, that's why my iPhone, I never updated. Because I'm not going to take the time to read all the terms and conditions. And like South Park, you're not going to have me as a human centipede. Not happening.
That show is becoming more and more relevant.
They're the new Simpsons. The new Simpsons.
Except they're more prophetic.
Yeah.
But so what we're talking about is essentially Amazon Amazon has been turning over Ring camera feeds to local police officers without the consent of the actual homeowner that the Ring camera has been attached to. Now, this can be done in a couple of different ways. If the police contacts them with a warrant, then they would essentially have to turn over this information, this footage,
which is how most tech companies are. Which
Absolutely.
is why they don't hold data.
Mm-hmm.
So I will interject just real quick, right? So kind of some prelogue to how we got here was, I think it was the Boston bomber or something of that nature. There was a real big issue with cell phone companies and the Fed and the FBI, and these cell phone companies, they would issue warrants, subpoena them for individuals' information.
The shooter in California.
That's what the issue was.
The 2 shooters in California.
And so what tech companies at that time did was they said, okay, well, we're not going to house data. The data is only going to be able to be found in its content form on the individual's device itself. So then that meant that if, the warrant was no longer going to the company, because companies don't want to, no company wants to say that. Yeah, they don't want the liability, and they don't want to say that, word's going to get out that, hey, we don't protect your privacy, And so then the warrant fully goes to the individual because then it's saved on the device. So most companies now, once it's deleted off the device, it's nowhere it can be found. They can only trace back to the company and say a timestamp from a number.
Yep. However, so Ring has it actually set up to where it stores, if you have the plan with them, it stores the video of all the interactions that the device has on the cloud devices, and essentially, the police would contact to begin with. Outside of these circumstances, the police would contact them with a warrant and ask them to provide the video or surveillance of this individual device. However, it has become almost kind of a new thing to where the police are now asking Amazon to turn over this video surveillance to these devices without actually having a warrant, claiming these emergency circumstances.
So since we're in Buck's corner, right? And this is the question I have for Buck earlier, so I might as well ask it aloud. Okay. Is it that the police are asking this, or that the NSA asked this of Amazon, and then it just automatically goes over to local police?
That's very good. So no, these are actually issues that we know of. So right now there have been 11 so far this year that Amazon will actively admit to. These are requests that have come from local police departments concerning emergency circumstances, and we're going to talk about exactly what these are the legal meaning and ramifications behind what emergency circumstances entails, because there's a lot that goes into that. And quite frankly, I don't see how that they can be classified as an emergency circumstance.
Or how is it admissible as evidence?
Well, I mean, it would be admissible as evidence altogether.
How?
Simply because the fact that it would be considered under it was gained under the exigent circumstances or emergency circumstances situation. So, for instance, the police can enter your home without a warrant if, for instance, they have been surveilling your home for the past week or so. They see a lot of traffic coming in and out. They see known drug dealers coming in and out. Well, they go and to knock on the door to make a confrontation with you, or at least to have that first contact with you. They knock on the door, they say, hey, it's the police. And then all of a sudden you start hearing the toilet flush over and over and over again. They can enter into your home because they have reasonable suspicion.
At that point, you're committing a crime.
Yes, or at least trying to
commit a crime.
Yes, by essentially destroying evidence.
Which is like, so the
you are in that moment committing a crime.
Yes. Which is the same thing as if, let's just say a police officer was to walk up to your door and you have your blinds open and you were in the act of committing a crime or something illegal inside of your home. They can enter your home at that point, which is, again, why I just question this aspect of it, because if it's automatically being turned over and there is no visual of a crime being committed, right? How is that admissible as evidence? It's almost the same situation with like these speed cameras, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because the first issue with a speed camera was that if you were given a ticket, it was no longer, because there was no officer that actually saw it, it was replayed on a video, which is why now when you get those tickets, you technically only have to pay them when you go to renew your license, because it's not necessarily a ticket, it's a Department of Revenue violation. And it's added to your tag when you renew it. So that's what worries me, because in certain situations to where like this could be a real issue, that evidence being improperly turned over, some smart aleck is going to come up to court one day and it's not going to be admissible, and some real jackwagon's going to go free because they did some heinous thing in front of a camera that improperly distributed evidence.
Well, the reason why I have such an issue with this is because it's being used under the emergency circumstances clause, or the exception to a warrantless search and seizure. So and I want to go into this, and I wrote these down. So in order for it to be categorized under emergency circumstance, it essentially has to meet 3 different prongs to be able to fill that void. So prong 1 is that there must exist an objectively reasonable basis for belief in the immediate need for police assistance for the protection of life or substantial property interest. So it has to be within that absolute moment that the police immediately need to know this in order to protect somebody's life or to protect their action, or to protect substantial property. Ring does not do that. When Ring has, unless you are sitting there playing a live feed on there, it takes a moment for that feed to upload to the cloud for them to be able to pull it and then transmit it. So there is not an actual immediate need there. And how would the police know that there was a Ring camera unless they were standing outside that building and saw that they had a camera? They would have been able to see the crime being committed at that fact that they wouldn't need it.
Or unless you're one of the jackwagons who put a sign out in front and say, hey, I have this.
Yeah, but then you'd have to have like a half a mile long driveway.
Correct.
It's mind blowing to think that they are saying that they are classifying an immediate need of action for something that could have happened an hour ago. It's crazy to think of that.
Which goes back to my point, right? Of what my fear is, because
the NSA already knows. They already see it anyway. They've got the direct feed regardless.
Yeah, and I'm not like, I mean, I was like somewhat joking about that, right? But to go in my fear, okay, this is not something that's immediate. But what, thinking about a situation where there's a home invasion that ends in a homicide, okay? They're notified an hour later. They show up. There's a body there. The only evidence of this happening was then sent to them. Is that admissible? Because even if it has that person's face on it, how then do you not have that evidence thrown out in court once you arrest that person? You can arrest them for it. Unless you have fingerprints, hair DNA, anything else that says that this person did it, all you have is this video evidence. If that gets thrown out,
it's circumstantial at best.
Correct.
Yeah, because I mean, that person could have, they could have kicked your door in. They could have essentially been there, robbed you blind, left, and then
somebody else
15 minutes later, somebody kicked in the back window and came in and killed you, and then that person would have been on the hook for it.
Correct. But then you'd never know. And then the first thing that a good attorney is going to say is, did you obtain that lawfully?
Mm-hmm.
How did you obtain that evidence? Did you obtain that through a warrant? Because if it wasn't obtained through a warrant, that's not admissible.
Unless you hit that I agree clause within the
person committing crime didn't hit the I agree clause.
Oh, no, the homeowner did.
So
the person that owns the device.
So if I got murdered,
mm-hmm. and you agreed to allow
My
ring and the terms and the subjects and terms and subjects, and in that segment it said that you would agree to turn over any sort of information during their version or their idea of what quote unquote emergency circumstances are.
I don't understand how that helps me, because if I
no, you're still dead.
Yeah, you know what I mean, I'm still dead, right?
Mhm.
But like,
That's why you need a gun.
just because I agreed to it,
Mhm.
okay, doesn't change that it's admissible evidence.
No, it does.
How?
Because then if you are agreeing to release that information in that video,
whether I'm dead or
police,
not,
whether you're dead or not, yes, because you agreed to allow
because
for that to
I'm
happen.
a party to it, even though I'm the victim.
Mhm.
Interesting. It's almost like, recorded calls in the state of Georgia, because a lot of places got to be two-way calls. Both parties have to agree to be recorded, but in Georgia, you're a one party.
Which is interesting to note, because in some states it's two-party.
So how does that go intercommerce? That's a whole nother ballgame.
Well, that's a very good question. So my big thing on that is, so Ring does not only audio, does not only video, but does audio. So imagine if you were walking across somebody's lawn and the Ring camera picked it up and you were having a communication, or you were having a conversation about robbing the First National Bank. And then the First National Bank is robbed. And then somebody submits
They're going to come get you. Yeah.
Exactly. But think about this. I think
that's fair, though.
Think about this.
It's not legal, but
think about this. If it's in New York, where it is a two-party consent state for an audio recording.
Now they can't try you with double jeopardy.
No, well, double jeopardies mean you've been tried, you've been found innocent, and you can't be tried again.
Well, what I'm saying is
that they cannot use that. That would not be admissible evidence.
Correct. So if that's not admissible evidence and there's no other evidence to the case or nothing else that ties you to it, then even if you did rob the bank, it's double jeopardy.
Yeah, they essentially cannot hold. I mean, they couldn't even try you on that simply because the evidence would not even allow for it to be brought into the courtroom. Yeah, it's interesting the fact that in these different consent states, how this could potentially play out, because of course you can be videoed in public at any point in time because you're essentially out in public. That's where the Ring camera picks it up and it's video. Audio is a different story, especially if you're having a conversation with somebody else that Ring audio then picks up.
And the definition of public, right? Because then, I mean, you've seen where people break into someone's house and then still sues them in a civil case. Something happens, right? So if you're on someone's private property and it submits it, because then you got to, I mean, for Ring to catch you up, unless you're on the sidewalk or in the street, you're on private property.
If you're on the sidewalk, you're in public. You're in public property.
That's what I'm saying. So on public property, they can record you for whatever reason. The moment you step on the private property,
not if you're having a private conversation, they can't. Not unless you're a part of that conversation.
Interesting.
In some of these states.
Yeah. Interesting world we live in. Although I will say this. Okay. I've seen some videos of some sick individuals.
I will say neighborhood wars has become my new obsession.
Like sick individuals who have gone up to people's Ring cameras and said some awful things. And and like to the point to where, like, I understand why this is coming about. I don't necessarily agree with the method that's being done in, but like that is definitely grounds for someone to be like detained for long periods of time, more than the first 48. I'm telling you, like, what as we were talking about this, something in the file cabinet popped up about this guy who
Sticks and stones, Jamie.
No, this one's bad though. This
Sticks and stones.
This guy followed this woman to her house. She ran inside, locked the doors, shut everything. He then starts saying about how he's going to do awful, heinous things to this woman through the Ring camera. Her husband couldn't get there fast enough. He's yelling at the guy through the Ring, and like, you know what I mean? Like he's still standing there talking about, well, you couldn't get here fast enough, even if you wanted to. All this other kind of stuff, like awful.
Sticks and stones.
Yeah, but sometimes sticks and stones become actions. That's the only
sometimes thing. But until they do, they're just sticks and stones.
Yeah, especially in the court of law.
Yeah, actions speak volumes more than words do.
Unless you live in certain counties,
or in certain states like this one.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Can't get into that one much.
Yeah.
The NDA does not allow for that to be discussed openly. Whew. So, and on that note,
nope.
As always,
we end there.
Yeah. As always, we like to say thank you for watching our show and to encourage you to like and share any part of our content that you see that we produce and we put out there. We also encourage everybody to comment. Even our haters, we actually enjoy our haters probably more than anything else. We get quite a bit of a kick out of because
I was sending screenshots like, you see what they just said? Sometimes we comment to boost it up because it helps make us famous.
Exactly. It's any comments, any likes, any shares, anything like really helps us get boosted in the news feed. It really helps us to be able to get our message out there even more than what we're able to just on our own. Or even spending money, quite frankly, honestly. That's the reason why we love our haters so much, because it's less money we have to spend.
Exactly.
So leave us a comment, like, share, and hit the subscribe button wherever you see our content being produced, and help us be able to grow the network and be able to hit it out or get everything out as much as possible. Also, go to our website that you see on the screen there in front of you, conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner and in the lower right-hand corner. And help us out with what you're able to. Every bit of our sponsorships really goes to help further the show, help us to be able to reach out with our message and really be able to share everything that we're bringing out a lot more than what just Jamie and I are able to do on our own.
And don't forget to subscribe to our email list.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of great things thanks to our sponsors and our supporters coming up, and we're really excited about the expansion that we're going to have on this podcast and this
massively.
Program. And I can barely contain keeping my mouth shut about what we're getting ready to do and the adventure that we're getting ready to go on with Conservatives Talk. And so be sure to stay tuned and subscribe. Put in your email address, get ready for our newsletters bi-weekly, get ready for special updates, get ready for the special program that we're getting ready to do in a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
It's really amazing what
game changer.
It's really amazing what this podcast is getting ready to grow through and grow to in the next level.
Absolutely. So let's jump into your favorite part again, Lewis.
122 days until we beat Stacey Abrams.
Absolutely.
Can't wait. It's not 112, it's 122.
Jamie's getting a little bit ahead of himself there.
I can't wait.
It's like Christmas morning.
I know, dude. When Brian Kemp stomps her again, I just can't wait.
Absolutely. So now we're going to have to amend this because it can't just be Abrams anymore. Not with what we're seeing.
Oh yeah, no. Until Herschel beats Raphael Warnock, because look,
the Republican ticket at large.
The Republican ticket, I am beyond over this. We have great Republicans who have supported us and supported our state thus far. Mm-hmm. We have to stand behind them. We have to let all the, I guess you could say, I call it sibling rivalry. We got to let it go. It's too important in November for us to let whatever issue you got with a certain candidate or a certain representative, you got to let it go. We got to vote Republican down ticket because we know what's getting ready to happen. We're the test ground for Democratic policies if we do not vote Republicans down ticket.
Absolutely. Georgia will become the new California, the new New York. Every state where Republicans or at least even Democrats are fleeing because of these policies.
Yep.
And Abrams is doing absolutely everything she can in order to essentially appease some of the issues of some of these moderate Democrats.
Saying things that don't make any sense and are really illegal, right? So, we're going to get into Raphael Warnock because I refuse to call him a reverend.
Well, he's a reverend of the political party.
Later, we're going to get in him later because there's so much baggage there that it deserves its own segment. almost its own show of how awful Warnock is. But I mean, Stacey Abrams came out on the AJC the other day, and like, I mean, flat out was talking about like trying bribes. Like, I mean, it was a flat out like a quick pro quo. Like, she literally said, you know, I would have done this or I would have done that with all the COVID money. And then someone reminded her, hey, you can't do that because that's not what the legislation says. And then said in the same sentence, well, if I was governor or if I was Brian Kemp, I would have gone out and tried to make a deal with Joe Biden to allow for that money to be used illegally.
With negotiated terms. Absolutely.
Like, are you serious? This is the person who they want to be your governor. This is why we got to let it go. Everyone's got to let it go. We got to stand behind Governor Kemp. We got to stand behind everyone who's on that who's on the down ticket, whether it's local, whether it's state, whether it's federal. We have to support them.
Absolutely. As we always say, if you don't vote or if you split vote, anything that comes afterwards is your fault.
It's your fault.
Just keep that in mind. But again, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be seeing y'all next week.